The hypocrisy of MAGA, Trump's FEMA failures expose lies about Democrats. In the wake of Hurricane Helene's catastrophic devastation in 2024, former President Donald Trump and his MAGA allies unleashed a barrage of falsehoods, accusing the Biden administration and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, of abandoning victims in Republican-leaning areas. They claimed Democrats were withholding aid, diverting funds to migrants, and neglecting storm-ravaged communities in states like North Carolina and Georgia. Yet, as Trump returned to the White House in 2025, his administration's actions have revealed a stark truth. The very accusations MAGA leveled against Democrats are precisely the horrors Republicans are now inflicting on disaster victims. From gutting FEMA to denying aid for wildfires, floods, and tornadoes, Trump's policies expose a pattern of lies and projection that extends far beyond emergency funds, reflecting a broader Republican strategy of blaming Democrats for their own misdeeds. The Hurricane Helene lie, MAGA's false narrative. As Hurricane Helene tore through the Southeast in September 2024, leaving over 225 dead and billions in damages, Trump and his surrogates seized the moment to politicize the tragedy. At campaign rallies and on social media, Trump falsely claimed that FEMA was neglecting Republican areas, asserting that the Biden administration was going out of their way to not help people in Republican areas in North Carolina. He alleged that Vice President Kamala Harris spent all her FEMA money, billions of dollars, on housing for illegal migrants, a debunked claim echoed by figures like Donald Trump Jr. and MAGA influencers. These lies suggested Democrats were stealing disaster funds to prioritize undocumented immigrants over American citizens, even as FEMA deployed over 5,600 personnel, 11.5 million meals, and 12.6 million liters of water to Helene victims. The White House and FEMA swiftly rebutted these bald-faced lies, clarifying that the $650 million Shelter and Services Program for migrants was funded separately by Customs and Border Protection, not FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund, which held $8.5 billion for immediate needs. Republican governors, including South Carolina's Henry McMaster and Virginia's Glenn Youngkin, praised Biden's superb federal response, contradicting Trump's narrative. Yet the misinformation spread, sowing distrust and even prompting death threats against FEMA staff. MAGA's rhetoric painted Democrats as callous and incompetent, setting the stage for a narrative of Republican heroism in disaster response. Trump's FEMA betrayal, denying aid to Americans. Fast forward to 2025, and the Trump administration's actions tell a different story. Rather than bolstering FEMA, Trump has moved to dismantle it, threatening to get rid of the agency and shift disaster response to states, a move experts warn would lead to chaos and greater suffering. His administration has denied critical disaster aid to states recovering from wildfires, floods, and tornadoes, contradicting the MAGA claim that Republicans prioritize American victims. In April 2025, Trump's FEMA denied North Carolina's request for extended aid to recover from Hurricane Helene, labeling it unwarranted, despite $8.4 billion in damages and ongoing rebuilding efforts. This decision stunned a state Trump won 3 times, exposing his willingness to abandon even Republican strongholds. Similarly, Washington state, hit by a deadly bomb cyclone in November 2024, was denied FEMA funds to repair highways, utilities, and homes, with Democratic Governor Bob Ferguson calling it a troubling example of the federal government withholding funding. Oregon and Hawaii also reported frozen FEMA grants for wildfires and floods, with over $120 million and $6 million respectively left in limbo. Trump's threats to withhold aid extend beyond denials. In California, battling devastating wildfires, he conditioned disaster relief on the state adopting restrictive voter ID laws and altering water management policies, demands unrelated to recovery. Former Trump officials revealed he previously withheld California wildfire aid in 2018 until shown that Republican voters in Orange County were affected, a pattern of politicization now repeating. These actions starkly contrast with MAGA's accusations that Democrats prioritize politics over people, revealing Republicans as the ones weaponizing disaster relief, a broader pattern of projection. The FEMA debacle is not an isolated case, but part of a broader Republican strategy. accuse Democrats of the very wrongs they commit. This projection deflects accountability and fuels MAGA's base, but the evidence exposes their hypocrisy. Immigration lies. Trump's claim that Democrats stole FEMA funds for migrants mirrors his own actions. In 2019, his administration diverted $155 million from FEMA's operating budget to fund migrant deportations to Mexico. While MAGA decried Democratic open borders, Trump's border wall and tariff policies drained billions that could have supported disaster recovery, leaving Americans in need. Voter suppression. MAGA figures accuse Democrats of rigging elections, yet Trump's demand for voter ID laws as a condition for California's wildfire aid suggests Republicans are the ones manipulating democratic processes. His administration's focus on tax cuts for billionaires and corporate donors over disaster relief further prioritizes political gain over public welfare. Environmental neglect. Trump criticized Democrats for environmental mismanagement, falsely blaming California's wildfires on fish conservation efforts. Yet, his first term saw the rollback of over 125 environmental regulations, including flood standards, exacerbating the severity of natural disasters. Project 2025, a blueprint for his second term, proposes privatizing weather agencies, critical for hurricane predictions, a move that would hinder disaster preparedness. The human cost of MAGA's lies. The consequences of Trump's policies and MAGA's misinformation are dire. States like North Carolina, still reeling from Helene's generational damage, face delayed recoveries as federal aid stalls. In California, wildfire victims risk losing homes without FEMA's flood insurance or rebuilding grants. Rural communities, often MAGA strongholds, suffer most, as state budgets cannot replace FEMA's expertise, supplies, or $133 billion in recovery funds provided over 4 years. Moreover, MAGA's lies during Helene's aftermath hindered aid delivery. Misinformation about FEMA's intentions led to armed harassment of responders, slowing relief efforts. By contrast, Biden's administration secured $100 billion for FEMA's disaster fund in 2024, ensuring robust responses to Helene and other crises. The irony is cruel. The states most loyal to Trump, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, and the Carolinas, face the greatest risk if FEMA is gutted, as they rely heavily on federal aid for frequent hurricanes and floods. Conclusion: holding MAGA accountable. Trump and his MAGA allies built a narrative that Democrats were heartless bureaucrats who abandoned disaster victims for political gain. Yet, as Trump's second term unfolds, it's clear that Republicans are the ones gutting FEMA, denying aid and prioritizing partisan demands over human suffering. This hypocrisy extends beyond emergency funds to immigration, voting rights, and environmental policy, where MAGA accuses Democrats of the very sins they commit. Americans must see through this projection. The lies about FEMA during Hurricane Helene were not just political theater. They cost lives, delayed recoveries, and sowed division. Now, as Trump's administration withholds aid from wildfire, flood, and tornado victims, the truth is undeniable. The MAGA movement's America First rhetoric masks a willingness to abandon Americans in their darkest hours. It's time to hold Trump and his allies accountable for the horrific actions they falsely attributed to Democrats, and to demand a federal response that prioritizes people over politics. By Scott Young, aka Sinfamous Gamer.